My mate belongs to another. But his wolf still craves me. A werewolf romance audiobook. The rain hit like shards of glass, slashing across the darkened forest as if the sky itself were angry. Mara stumbled along the narrow, muddy path, her soaked coat clinging to her frame. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each one mingling with the sharp scent of wet pine and soil. She had thought the storm would pass, thought she could outrun the memories she carried in her chest. She had been wrong. Thunder rolled, shaking the trees above her, and Mara pressed herself against the rough bark of an ancient oak, trying to catch her bearings. The forest seemed endless, a maze of shadows and whispered warnings. Every instinct in her screamed that she shouldn't be here, yet something unseen had drawn her deeper, past the point of reason. Then she heard it, a low growl, vibrating through the underbrush. Not a dog's growl, too deliberate, too aware. Her pulse spiked, adrenaline sharpening her senses. Something was watching her, something alive, something that shouldn't exist. Mara tried to move quietly, her boots sinking into the sodden earth. The growl deepened, a dark, guttural sound that resonated in her bones. She stopped, heart hammering, and then saw it, a pair of eyes glowing gold in the rain, fixated on her. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling more from fear than the cold. The creature stepped forward, a massive shadow emerging from the trees. Its fur was black as midnight, dripping with rain, muscles rippling under the slit coat. She couldn't tell if it was wolf or something else entirely, yet its gaze held an intelligence, a weight of awareness that froze her blood. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the beast lunged, but not at her. A figure stepped from behind it, taller than any man she'd ever seen, with a coat plastered to his lean, powerful frame. His hair was dark, wet, sticking to the sharp angles of his face. His eyes met hers, a storm of gold and amber, and Mara felt something inside her quiver, a pull. She didn't understand. The wolf receded slightly, growling low, protective. The man didn't flinch. Instead, he moved with a fluid grace, hands raised slightly in a silent warning to the creature. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, voice deep, resonant, commanding but with a strange softness underneath. "It's not safe." Mara swallowed, trying to steady her shaking lips. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to get caught in a storm?" His lips curved, almost imperceptibly, like he found some humor in her terror. "Or get lost in my forest." Her stomach dropped. This was his forest? Something in the way he spoke, the dominance in his tone, made her instinctively tense. And yet, there was a pull she couldn't resist, a magnetic weight to the man and the creature behind him. The wolf moved closer to him, nudging his leg, and Mara caught the flicker in the man's eyes, a flash of warmth, of recognition, that didn't belong to a stranger. He glanced at her again, and it was as if he could see straight into her soul, past the fear, past the walls she had built, straight into the raw, aching vulnerability she had tried to bury. "You're alone," he said, stating it more than asking. Mara's throat tightened. I don't have a choice. I had to leave." The man's gaze softened just slightly. Running from something or someone? Both questions hung in the storm's slick air, unspoken truths brushing against the edges of reality. Mara wanted to hide, to turn and vanish into the trees, yet something in the golden depths of his eyes held her in place. A sharp crack of lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in brilliant white. The wolf barked human, commanding, and the man moved instinctively in front of Mara, shielding her from some invisible danger. For a heartbeat, she saw him not as a stranger, but as a protector, a sentinel carved from shadows and fire. "I'm not afraid of wolves," she said, though her voice betrayed her. "You should be afraid of some things," he replied, his eyes flicking to the underbrush. "Not all wolves wear fur." The words sent a chill down her spine, an unfamiliar prickle of fear mixed with fascination. Mara didn't know why, but she believed him. Something in him was more than human, yet undeniable, a presence that carried danger and magnetism in equal measure. Rain poured harder, drumming against leaves, slicking the ground beneath their feet. The man's wolf stepped closer, brushing against him, growling softly at every distant sound. Mara realized then that she had never seen a wolf act with such human-like awareness, nor had she ever felt a presence so intensely protective, so deeply connected to the man who commanded it. "Come with me," he said abruptly, turning back into the trees. "You can't survive out here alone." "Not tonight." Mara hesitated, heart torn between instinct and fascination. Something about this man and his wolf called to her, a wild, inexplicable pull she couldn't deny. She wanted to run, to retreat, to the safety of the known world, but the storm, the isolation, and the golden fire in his gaze anchored her. She followed. Branches whipped her face, rain soaked through her hair and coat, yet she hardly noticed. She only noticed his presence, the way the wolf mirrored his movements, the subtle power that radiated from every fiber of his being. And in that storm, she realized something terrifying and exhilarating. Her life was no longer her own. Something ancient and fated had claimed her path, and for the first time in years, Mara didn't want to fight it. A low growl rumbled in her chest, and she realized it wasn't the wolf that was warning her. It was her own blood, sensing the bond she could not yet name. She was tethered to him in a way she couldn't explain, a thread of fate winding tighter with every step she took behind him through the wet, shivering forest. Lightning flashed again, and in that blinding moment, Mara saw the truth. Her life had just shifted, irrevocably, and somewhere, deep inside, she knew she would never, ever be the same. The storm raged on, and yet, in the eye of its chaos, Mara felt a flicker of something else: possibility, desire, danger, and an impossible pull toward the man who would change everything. The wolf growled again, low and warning, but Mara felt no fear, only a heartbeat away from surrendering completely to whatever this wild, unstoppable force was. And somewhere in the distance, under the blanket of storm and night, destiny stirred. Mara's boots squelched through the wet forest floor, each step carrying her deeper into a world she didn't understand, yet already feared. The storm had subsided, leaving only the gentle drizzle and a forest steeped in mist, but the tension clinging to her skin was far from gone. She trailed silently behind the man, this stranger whose presence seemed carved from shadows and flame, her senses alert to every snap of a twig, every distant rustle. "You're quiet," he said, his voice cutting through the damp air. "That's good. It helps you survive here." She swallowed, unsure if she should respond. Words felt heavy in this place, almost fragile compared to the raw intensity of the silence between them. Still, something compelled her to speak. "I'm not used to this," she admitted, her gaze darting nervously toward the trees that seemed to press closer with every step. "I didn't know there were things like you out here." He glanced at her, eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion, but as if measuring the truth in her tone. "Most humans don't, and the ones who do, rarely walk away unharmed." Mara's chest tightened. That simple acknowledgement, without explanation, without threat, made her pulse spike in a mixture of fear and fascination. She wanted to ask more, to understand, but she sensed the boundary he placed around himself, invisible yet unmistakable. They moved in silence for several minutes. The forest seemed to shift around them, the trees arching as if leaning in to watch this unlikely pair. Every now and then, she caught a flicker of movement, shadows darting between trunks, the sound of low growls in the distance, but he never reacted, except for a subtle tightening of his stance or a flick of his golden gaze. It was clear, he knew what lurked in the dark. Eventually, they reached a clearing where the ground sloped down to a small hidden stream. The rainwater rippled gently, reflecting the muted gray sky. The man stopped and turned toward her. "You'll need to rest," he said, gesturing toward a fallen log near the bank. "It's not safe to wander further tonight." "Not alone." Mara hesitated. Her instincts screamed that she should say no, that she should run and reclaim the world she had left behind. And yet, something in the tilt of his head, the weight of his gaze, made her pause. I don't have anywhere else to go," she admitted softly, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her defenses. The man studied her for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "Fine, but stay close. And don't move without warning." She perched on the log, damp hair plastered to her face, shivering not entirely from the cold. Her eyes never left him as he crouched near the stream, seemingly attuned to some invisible rhythm of the forest. His movements were fluid, precise, and yet there was an underlying tension, like a predator always aware of its surroundings, but also aware of her. "You're different," she said after a while, breaking the silence. "There's something about you, something I can't explain." A faint shadow of a smile crossed his lips. "Different how?" "Not human," she whispered, realizing the words almost escaped her before she could stop them. The forest seemed to listen, holding its breath in the fog-laden air. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his golden gaze softened, just enough to make her heart tighten. "You're perceptive," he said finally, "more than most humans. But perception can be dangerous. You'll need to learn which truths to follow and which to fear." Mara's pulse quickened. His words hinted at a reality she wasn't ready to accept, a world far larger and far darker than her own. And yet, she wanted to know. Every fiber of her being ached to understand the magnetism he exuded, the subtle command over the forest and the creature that followed him loyally. "Who are you?" she asked, almost instinctively. He paused, eyes scanning the mist-draped woods, as if he were weighing the secrets in his mind against her right to hear them. "I am what you might call a protector of this forest, of those who cross my path unintentionally." Mara's brow furrowed. "Protector? Yes," he said, tone low and deliberate. "But protectors have enemies. And you're walking into a world of shadows you don't yet understand." A shiver ran down her spine, not entirely from fear, but from the raw energy in his words, the promise of danger and the allure of something forbidden. Something that didn't belong in her ordinary human life, yet demanded she follow. As the fog thickened, Mara's attention was drawn to the wolf at his side, now sitting calmly, its gaze flicking between her and the trees. There was intelligence in those amber eyes, a silent communication that made her skin prickle. It was more than an animal, it was a sentinel, a guardian bound to him in ways she could not yet fathom. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted, voice small. I feel like I should trust you." The man's gaze softened, just for a fraction of a heartbeat, and Mara felt it as a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. "Trust is earned," he said, "but I'll keep you safe tonight." "That is a promise." Something in her chest loosened. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe the storm, maybe the pull she couldn't resist. But she nodded, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Mara allowed herself to feel a spark of hope. As the fog swallowed the clearing, Mara realized she had no idea what this night would demand of her, or what truths would soon surface. But she sensed one thing clearly. Her life had crossed into a realm she could never leave behind. The golden-eyed man and the wolf that shadowed him were not merely strangers. They were echoes of something unknown, something fated, and something that would claim her heart whether she wanted it or not. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the forest whispered their secrets, waiting for the dawn when Mara would have no choice but to face them. The forest had fallen into a fragile silence after the storm, but Mara could still hear the faint pulse of life all around her, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the soft lapping of the stream against the bank. She stayed on the log, watching the man move with fluid grace, his form almost merging with the shadows. The wolf padded silently beside him, ears alert, eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Why are you out here alone?" he asked suddenly, voice low, as if afraid the forest itself might overhear. Mara flinched slightly. She hadn't realized he had been speaking to her, so absorbed was she in the rhythm of his presence. I didn't have anywhere else to go," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm escaping." The word hung between them, heavy and vulnerable. For a moment, he said nothing, merely studying her in the soft gray light that filtered through the canopy. Then he crouched by the stream, one hand skimming the water, his eyes never leaving hers. "Most humans think they can escape their past," he said quietly, "but it has a way of following, no matter how far they run." Mara shivered, though the chill wasn't from the damp or the fading storm. There was an intensity in his gaze, a knowing that unsettled her. She wanted to run from it, to retreat to the safety of a world that no longer existed for her, but she couldn't move. Something in the golden depths of his eyes held her in place, a tether she didn't yet understand. "I don't know how to stop it," she confessed, her fingers digging into the wet log. "Everything I've tried, it hasn't worked. I just keep running." He was silent for a long moment, then stood, brushing water from his hands. "Running can only get you so far," he said. "At some point, you have to face the storm inside, just as you face the storm outside." Mara's throat tightened. Those words resonated, echoing through the parts of her she had buried long ago: pain, loss, betrayal. She wanted to hide, to curl into herself and disappear into the mist. But something about him made her pause. She wanted to trust him, even though she didn't know why. The wolf stepped closer, nudging her knee softly. Mara looked down and met its gaze. There was an intelligence there that startled her, a silent understanding that seemed almost human. She couldn't explain the flicker of recognition she felt, the strange sense that she belonged if only a little in this wild, shadowed world. "You're fated to meet certain people," he said abruptly, his voice slicing through the foggy air. "Some encounters are not accidents." Mara's breath caught. "Fated? Yes," he said, his golden eyes glinting. "Some bonds are older than you can imagine. They exist beyond choice, beyond time, and sometimes they're impossible to ignore." Her pulse quickened. She had heard stories of mates and soul bonds, of connections that transcended reason, but she had always dismissed them as myth. And yet, standing here in the forest with him, she felt a pull she couldn't deny, a thread winding tighter around her heart even as fear clutched at her chest. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made her spin, heart hammering. The wolf growled, low in warning, and the man's stance shifted, alert, protective, a predator ready to strike. Mara froze, her body taut with instinct. A figure emerged from the mist, tall, cloaked, eyes hidden beneath a hood. The wolf's growl intensified, and the man stepped in front of Mara, placing himself between her and the stranger. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice a low growl, resonating with something primal that made Mara's skin prickle. The stranger stopped, hands raised slightly. "I mean no harm," a calm voice replied. "I'm looking for someone." The man's gaze narrowed, muscles tensing. Mara felt the air thrum with an electric tension, the forest itself holding its breath. Something about the stranger felt wrong, dangerous, yet human, or perhaps something that straddled the line between worlds. "You'll find nothing here," the man said, voice cold and sharp. "Move along, or leave." Forcibly, the stranger hesitated, then slowly retreated into the mist, leaving only the echo of their presence behind. The wolf's growl softened, and the man exhaled, his shoulders relaxing just slightly. Mara realized then that she had been holding her breath. "Who was that?" she asked, voice trembling. "Trouble," he said simply, eyes scanning the shadows. "Some things are drawn to those who are special." Mara's stomach twisted. "Special? Me?" He turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable. "Yes," he said, voice low, intense. "More than you know, and more than you can understand yet." Her heart pounded as she realized the weight of his words. There was something about her, something that mattered in this hidden, dangerous world he inhabited. Something that bound her to him in ways she didn't yet grasp. For the first time, Mara felt the pulse of destiny beneath her feet, the subtle hum of a world she had never believed in yet was now inescapably real. The forest whispered around them, leaves quivering with secrets, as if acknowledging that she had crossed into something far larger than herself. The wolf padded closer, resting its massive head against her knee. Mara hesitated, then reached down, letting her fingers brush the fur. The warmth and intelligence in its gaze sent a shiver down her spine, a warning, or perhaps a welcome. The man watched quietly, golden eyes glinting in the dim light, and Mara realized that this night had changed everything. The storm had passed, but it had left more than water in its wake. It had left her in a world of shadows, secrets, and the first, undeniable echo of fate. And as she sat in the misty clearing, Mara understood something terrifying and exhilarating. Nothing would ever be the same again. The forest seemed to breathe around Mara, each rustle of leaves and creak of branches a reminder that she had stepped into a world unlike any she had ever known. The storm had left the ground slick and the air thick with mist, but it also carried a strange clarity, a sharpened awareness of every scent, every sound, every subtle movement around her. She followed the man carefully, trying to memorize each twist of the path, every rooted obstacle, every shadow that might hide something she wasn't ready to face. The wolf padded silently beside him, its massive frame moving with a grace that seemed almost unreal. Its amber eyes flicked constantly, as if it could see the forest in a spectrum Mara could not even imagine. She felt a mixture of awe and unease. How could one creature embody such intelligence, such presence? And yet, there it was, a sentinel, in fur, unwaveringly loyal to the man she had only just met. "You need to eat," he said abruptly, breaking the silence. The authority in his voice was tempered with something gentler, a subtle care that disarmed her. "Strength isn't just survival, it's the only way to endure what comes next." Mara hesitated, her mind racing. "What comes next?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. He didn't answer immediately, scanning the forest as if listening for secrets only he could hear. Then he produced a small pack from beneath his coat, damp from the rain, and handed her a carefully wrapped bundle. The gesture was simple, yet the care behind it struck her deeply. She unwrapped the bundle to find bread, cheese, and a flask of water. Her fingers brushed his as she took it, and for a fleeting heartbeat, she felt a spark of strange, electric awareness that seemed to tether her to him. "Eat," he repeated, softer this time, almost coaxing. "You'll need it." She sank to the damp forest floor, careful not to disturb the thick blanket of wet leaves. Each bite was slow, her mind too alert to let her fully relax. She watched him as he crouched near the stream, hands skimming the rippling water, eyes constantly alert. There was a predator's precision in his movements, but also a meticulous care, a grace that seemed both human and something beyond. "You don't talk much about yourself," she said cautiously, breaking the fragile quiet. "Why?" He studied her, golden eyes glinting in the dim light of the mist. "Because some truths aren't safe," he said finally, "and some truths change the way people see you forever." Mara nodded, sensing the weight of his words. "I understand that. I've learned the hard way." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the deep reserves of fear and pain she had tried to suppress. He didn't speak for a while, letting the soft sounds of the forest fill the air between them. Then he stood, brushing water from his hands, and gestured for her to follow. The path to the cabin wound down a gentle slope, hidden beneath thick pine trees that leaned in close, their branches heavy with rainwater. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine resin, carrying a heady, almost intoxicating sweetness. The cabin emerged from the mist like a secret revealed, its walls slick with rain, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Mara's chest tightened with relief and awe. Shelter, warmth, and the first hint of safety she had felt since running from her past. But unease lingered. Even here, in the glow of the cabin, she felt the forest pressing and watching, waiting. "This is real?" she whispered, almost afraid to ask. He glanced at her, and a faint shadow of amusement softened the intensity of his golden gaze. "Everything here is real," he said. "Some of it more than you can imagine." Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and earth, a comforting mixture that made Mara's limbs loosen slightly. It was small, functional, and surprisingly lived in blankets folded neatly, a fire pit in the center, a pot simmering over gentle flames. She allowed herself a slow breath, her fingers brushing the edge of a wooden table, the warmth of the fire radiating through her chilled body. "Stay," he instructed, his voice firm but not harsh. "I'll keep watch," she nodded, settling near the fire, feeling the wolf curl at her feet. Its presence was reassuring, a grounding force she didn't fully understand. She could feel the intelligence in its eyes, the unspoken communication. Between it and the man, there was an invisible thread connecting them all, something that resonated with her own heartbeat, a rhythm she could sense but not yet name. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," she said softly after a long silence. "There's something about you, something I can't understand." He studied her quietly, golden eyes flickering with something subtle, curiosity, concern, perhaps a touch of admiration. "And yet you are here," he said finally. "Some things are stronger than understanding. Some things are fate." Mara shivered, the word striking her with its weight. Fate. She had never believed in destiny, in soul bonds, in threads that tied people together across space and time. And yet, standing here in the glow of the fire, feeling the warmth of the wolf beside her and the presence of this man in front of her, she couldn't shake the sense that she had been pulled here by forces far larger than herself. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the wooden walls, intertwining with the dim firelight. The wind sighed through the pines, carrying whispers that sounded almost like voices, secrets of the forest spilling into the cabin. Mara curled into herself, listening to the rhythm of the man's breathing, the gentle crackle of the fire, the wolf's low, protective growl. For the first time in years, she felt a fragile sense of calm, as though the storm outside had left a trace of safety in its wake. Yet unease lingered, a subtle tension under the surface. She sensed eyes beyond the trees, distant, watching, measuring. She could feel the weight of danger pressing just beyond reach, an invisible threat she didn't understand but could not ignore. And in that tension, she felt the stirrings of something more, an undeniable pull toward him, toward the wolf, toward the mysteries this forest promised but had yet to reveal. Her thoughts wandered to the night's earlier events, the storm, the encounter with the man and his wolf, the strange resonance of his golden eyes. Questions formed in her mind, questions she dared not voice yet, but beneath them a deeper truth pulsed, a fragile thread connecting her fate to theirs. Outside, the forest whispered beneath the pines, and Mara realized with both fear and wonder that she had crossed a threshold she could never return from. Her life, the one she had clung to, protected, and tried to control, was gone. What lay ahead was unknown, dangerous, and breathtakingly alive, and as she sat there, fingers brushing the wolf's thick fur, feeling the warmth of the fire, Mara felt a flicker of hope, a fragile spark of trust. Somewhere in the shadows, something waited: fate, destiny, perhaps even love, and she knew, with an unshakable certainty, that her journey had only just begun. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across the cabin walls. Mara sat close, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. She could feel the warmth of the wolf curled at her feet, its steady presence oddly comforting. Yet despite the fragile safety of the cabin, unease lingered in the corners of her mind, like a thread she couldn't untangle. The man stood near the doorway, gazing out into the misty forest. Rain had stopped, but the trees were heavy with lingering droplets, and the fog hugged the ground in a thick, impenetrable blanket. He moved with a predator's ease, yet his posture held a quiet vigilance, as if he could sense every movement. In the shadows before it even happened, "Why do you stay out here?" Mara asked softly, breaking the silence. She dared not call him "you" in a familiar tone, though every instinct told her that she wanted to. Why not blend in, go somewhere safer? He turned, golden eyes catching the firelight, sharp and unreadable. "This forest is mine," he said, "and mine alone. Safety is an illusion, one that humans cling to because they fear the truth. I prefer reality." Mara shivered, both from the cold and the weight of his words. There was something about him, something unyielding and raw, that set her heart pounding. "And what truth is that?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately, and Mara realized he was weighing the danger of speaking aloud. Finally, he spoke, voice low and resonant. "The world is not as simple as you think. There are creatures you cannot imagine, powers you cannot comprehend, and fates that do not bend to human desire." Her throat tightened. She had already glimpsed pieces of that truth tonight: the wolf, the storm, the golden-eyed man who had saved her without explanation. "And me?" she asked, almost breathless. "Where do I fit into that?" For a long moment, he didn't respond, and Mara felt the weight of his gaze like a physical presence pressing against her. Finally, he spoke, softer this time. "You've already crossed the threshold. You belong to something larger now, whether you realize it or not." Mara's chest constricted. Belonging. It was a word she had not felt in years. She had run from her past, from the betrayals and broken promises that had haunted her. And yet, standing in this cabin, surrounded by shadows and whispers of something beyond human understanding, the idea of belonging was intoxicating and terrifying. The wolf stirred at her feet, nudging her hand gently, as if sensing the turmoil within her. Mara's fingers brushed its thick fur, warm and comforting. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. "I don't know if I can face whatever it is out there, or whatever I've become part of." He stepped closer, his presence filling the small cabin, golden eyes softening ever so slightly. "You've faced more than you know," he said, "and you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. But strength alone is not enough. You'll need trust, and patience, and the willingness to face truths you've been avoiding." Mara's eyes flickered to his, searching for the unspoken layers beneath the surface. There was a depth to him, an entire world hidden in those golden eyes, and yet he did not force her to look. He simply allowed her to see, to wonder, to question. "I'm afraid," she whispered, the words trembling on her lips. "Afraid of failing, afraid of losing control, afraid of being used." He did not flinch. Instead, he nodded, acknowledging her fear without judgment. "Fear is not weakness," he said. "It is awareness, and those who recognize it can survive anything." A long silence followed, broken only by the low hum of the fire and the soft drip of water from the cabin roof. Mara felt the weight of the night pressing around them, the forest outside holding its secrets close. And yet, in that silence, there was a strange intimacy, a fragile bond forming between them, tenuous yet undeniable. "You carry pain," he said finally, voice quieter now, "and it shapes you more than you realize." Mara's throat tightened, and she looked down at her hands. Memories she had tried to bury surged to the surface, the betrayals, the losses, the moments when she had been forced to rely on no one but herself. I don't know how to let it go, she admitted. You don't have to let it go, he replied. Not yet, but you must confront it, face it. Only then can you move forward. Only then can you survive what's coming. Mara swallowed hard, realizing that the weight of her past had followed her here, into the shadows of this forest, into the presence of a man and a wolf who were more than either of them seemed. And for the first time, she sensed that confronting. It would not be easy, but it might be necessary. The wolf shifted at her side, resting its massive head on her lap. Mara's fingers automatically stroked its fur, feeling the warmth and the intelligence in its gaze. She wondered, fleetingly, if the bond she felt with the animal was part of what drew her to the man, the way they moved together, trusted each other, and existed in harmony with the forest's hidden rhythms. He watched her, silent, and she felt the pull of his attention, a magnetic force that seemed to reach beyond words, beyond understanding. Her pulse quickened, and Mara realized that the storm of her past, the mysteries of the forest, and the golden-eyed man were all entwined now, threads she could not unravel. Night deepened, the shadows growing longer and darker, yet inside the cabin, Mara felt a strange warmth. The fire's glow illuminated the walls, the wolf's fur, and the man's sharp features, casting flickering patterns that danced like secrets in the air. She knew sleep would not come easily, not with the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her, and yet a strange calm settled over her, a quiet acknowledgement that she was no longer alone. That for the first time in years, someone was watching over her, keeping her safe, and somewhere in the forest outside, the trees whispered, as if aware of the choices Mara had yet to make, the dangers that loomed, and the threads of fate that had begun to weave themselves around her life. The shadows of the past were never far, but perhaps, for the first time, Mara understood that facing them could lead to something she had long thought impossible: trust, safety, and even belonging. The wolf stirred once more, nudging her gently, and Mara allowed herself a small, tentative smile. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, no clue of the challenges and revelations waiting in the forest. But for the first time since the storm began, she felt a spark of hope. And in that fragile spark, she sensed that her true journey was only just beginning. The cabin was quiet, save for the low crackle of the fire and the occasional drip of water from the roof. Mara sat by the hearth, tracing the edges of the blanket around her shoulders. Outside, the forest was a shadowed sea of trees and mist, every rustle and whisper making her pulse tighten. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes, the faint tremor of the night that seemed to hum in time with her own heartbeat. The man moved silently across the cabin, placing a small, hand-carved cup in front of her. Steam rose from the dark liquid. Inside, drink, he said, his voice gentle but commanding. You'll need it. You've been through more than you realize. Mara lifted the cup, warming her hands on it. The liquid was earthy and bitter, unfamiliar, but it grounded her. She drank slowly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The wolf lay at her feet, its head resting lightly against her lap. She brushed its fur absent-mindedly, surprised at the comfort she felt from its presence, the quiet intelligence in its amber eyes. You know, she said cautiously, I've never met anyone like you, or anything like this. Her hands gestured vaguely toward the forest beyond the window, the wolf, the man himself. It's like stepping into a dream I can't wake from. He paused, leaning against the wooden frame of the doorway, golden eyes catching the flicker of firelight. It's no dream, he said. It's the reality you've avoided all your life. And now, it's found you. Mara felt her chest tighten. Avoided? Reality? Yes, she had been running for years, hiding from her past, from pain, from herself. And somehow, this strange, silent man, with his wolf and his eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul, had found her. But I didn't move. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady when I asked the question I had been holding back for days. What are you? The silence that followed was deafening. His jaw clenched, his golden eyes flared, and for a brief second, I thought I saw them shift, like molten fire swirling inside, too bright, too wild to be human. You don't want that answer, he said finally, his voice rough. I stepped closer despite myself, my chest rising and falling rapidly. Yes, I do. His expression darkened, torn between warning me away and the pull that neither of us could fight anymore. Finally, he exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping as though conceding to some invisible force. I told you, he said quietly, my world isn't safe for you. But if you insist on knowing. He glanced at the circling wolves behind him, then back at me. His next words were almost a growl. They're not here by accident. They're hunters. Rogues. I blinked, confused. Hunters? Hunting what? His gaze sharpened. Hunting me. The weight of those two words crushed the air from my lungs. My pulse thundered in my ears as my mind scrambled to process what he meant. But before I could ask more, one of the rogues let out a deep, guttural snarl that vibrated through the forest floor. Lucien's head snapped toward them, his body moving instinctively between me and the danger. And then I saw it, the subtle shudder that ran through him, the way his fingers curled, the faint sound of bone cracking beneath skin. His chest rose and fell in heavy, controlled breaths. His muscles tightened like a predator ready to strike. Something primal stirred beneath his skin, and I knew without him saying it that Lucien was more than I'd imagined. Stay behind me, he ordered, his voice deepening into something otherworldly. Lucien, wait, you can't do it now. Before I could argue, the wolves lunged, everything blurred snarls, claws, and flashes of fur. Lucien moved faster than my eyes could follow, his strength inhuman, his strikes brutal and precise. The rogues fought viciously, their teeth bared, but they weren't a match for him. He was wild, relentless, untamed. The storm itself made flesh. When the last rogue collapsed, whimpering and retreating into the darkness, Lucien stood there, panting, his chest heaving, blood streaking his jaw and neck. I stared at him, frozen, as the silence of the forest returned. His eyes his eyes still glowed, brighter now, fierce and unnatural. And in that moment, there was no denying it anymore. He wasn't human, and somehow, I wasn't afraid. I took a hesitant step forward, my voice a whisper. You saved me. Lucien turned toward me slowly, his jaw tense, his expression unreadable. I warned you, he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. Now, there's no going back. For the first time, I realized the truth that whatever I'd stumbled into, whatever bound us together, it was bigger than both of us. The pull between us burned hotter than ever, and beneath the full wolf's moon, I felt it, the faint electric hum in my veins, like destiny itself had just awoken. The forest was quiet, too quiet, a strange, charged silence hung in the air as I followed Kale through the dense woods, the silver light of the full moon filtering through the trees like strands of woven glass. The storm had passed, leaving the air damp and heavy, carrying the sharp scent of pine and earth. My heart pounded with each step, not because I was afraid, but because I could feel his turmoil radiating off him in waves, wild, restless, and dark. I should have stayed behind at the cabin. I should have listened when he warned me, but something inside me, something primal and irrational, couldn't let him face whatever haunted him alone. Kale, I whispered, my breath visible in the cool night air. Where are we going? He didn't answer. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight, his stride longer than usual, forcing me to half jog to keep up. When he finally stopped, we stood at the edge of a moonlit clearing. The ground was scattered with leaves and pale stones, and the wind carried the distant, haunting call of a wolf. This place, he murmured, almost to himself. It's older than us, older than this land. I frowned, stepping closer. What is it? He turned to face me then, and for the first time since I'd met him, Kale looked uncertain. Shadows danced across his sharp features, softening the feral edge I'd grown used to. He hesitated before speaking, as though weighing how much of himself to reveal. This is where my family's blood oath was forged, he said finally, his voice low and rough. This is where our fate was bound to the moon, where the first alpha made his pact. I blinked, struggling to process his words. You mean, this is where it started? All of it? The shifting? The bond? Kale's piercing silver eyes locked on mine, and a shiver ran through me. Yes, and tonight, I brought you here because, he trailed off, swallowing hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, because I can't fight this anymore. Something in his tone made my throat tighten. Fight what? He stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. You, he said simply. I froze, my chest rising and falling unevenly. You're in my blood, Arya, he continued, his voice ragged, as if the words themselves cost him something to speak. I tried to stay away. I tried to deny it, but The wolf inside me. He inhaled sharply, his eyes flashing with a faint, unearthly glow. It wants you. Always has. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world around us seemed to blur, the air thick with something electric and dangerous. My own wolf buried deep within me, still dormant and unawakened, stirred faintly at his confession, an instinct I barely understood pressing me toward him. I don't, my voice caught, breaking into a whisper. I don't know what to do with this, Kale. You don't have to do anything, he murmured, lifting a hand as though to touch me, then stopping just shy of my skin. Just, don't run from it. The words settled between us like an unspoken promise, soft but unyielding. But before I could answer, a low, guttural growl shattered the silence. Kale stiffened instantly, his head snapping toward the dark tree line. His hand shot out, pulling me behind him in one swift, protective motion. Stay close, he whispered, his voice dropping into something primal, his wolf bleeding through. The shadows shifted, leaves rustled, and then I saw them, 3 figures stepping out of the forest, their eyes glowing faint amber, their movements deliberate and predatory. Rogues, I didn't need Kale to tell me. The air thickened with danger, the forest itself seeming to hold its breath. Kale, one of them sneered, his voice rough, dripping with malice. We heard you've been keeping secrets. That's unlike you. Kale's shoulders tensed, his voice low and dangerous. This isn't your territory. Leave. The leader laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Territory lines don't matter anymore, Alpha. Not when your little human has something we want. My heart stopped. My fingers curled into fists, nails, digging into my palms as I stepped closer to Kale. Don't, he growled under his breath, sensing my movement. Stay behind me. But the rogues didn't back down. They spread out, circling us slowly, like wolves closing in on prey. The tension was unbearable, every second stretching into eternity. I could feel Kale's power radiating off him, his alpha presence almost tangible, like the forest itself bent to his will. But there were 3 of them, and something in their posture told me they weren't afraid to die. This isn't going to end well, I whispered, my voice trembling. Kale's silver gaze flicked to mine for the briefest moment. And in that instant, I saw everything he wasn't saying, his fear for me, his hatred for them, his desperation to protect what was his. Then we make sure it ends on our terms, he said, his voice low, deadly calm. And then, before I could breathe, Kale shifted. It wasn't slow or graceful. It was violent. Bones cracked, muscles tore, his body rippling with raw, untamed power as his wolf exploded outward in a blur of midnight fur and silver eyes. A guttural snarl ripped from his throat, deep and feral, making the rogues hesitate just long enough for me to back away behind a fallen tree. The fight was chaos. Claws, teeth, and snarls under the cold light of the moon. Kale moved like shadow and lightning combined, his sheer strength overwhelming. But the rogues were relentless, their attacks vicious and calculated. One lunged at him from behind, and instinct drove me forward, grabbing a jagged rock from the ground and hurling it with everything I had. It struck the rogue's shoulder, throwing him off balance long enough for Kale to slam him to the ground with bone-crushing force. Another came for me, his growl low and hungry, and my scream tore through the night. But before he could reach me, Kale's massive wolf form slammed into him, teeth sinking deep into his neck. When the last rogue finally fell silent, the clearing reeked of blood and adrenaline. Kale stood over the bodies, his chest heaving, his fur matted with sweat and crimson streaks. Then his gaze found mine, silver, wild, unapologetic. And in that look, I saw everything: the danger, the longing, the unspoken bond tying us together. But before I could take a step toward him, a single sound split the night, a distant howl, deep and commanding, carrying across the forest like a warning. Kale's ears twitched. His body went rigid. That, he said finally, his voice low and strained as he shifted back into human form, wasn't a rogue. My stomach twisted. Then who? He cut me off, his gaze dark and unreadable. The council knows you're here. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Whatever fragile balance Kale had been clinging to between his world and mine, it was about to shatter. The night had fallen thick and restless over Blackridge, smothering the town in a silence so deep that even the forest seemed to hold its breath. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of pine and earth, and somewhere far beyond the ridgeline, thunder rumbled faintly like an omen. Leela stood on the porch of Elias's cabin, her fingers curled around the wooden railing as she stared at the horizon, where the moon was beginning to rise vast, swollen, and burning red. Her pulse matched its slow climb into the sky, each beat hammering against her ribs like the pounding of distant war drums. This was no ordinary full moon. She could feel it. Her body hummed with an energy she couldn't name, her skin prickling, as if the very air carried secrets meant only for her. Behind her, the door creaked open, and Elias stepped out, his broad shoulders framed by the dim, flickering light inside the cabin. He didn't say a word at first, just stood beside her, his presence radiating heat in the cool mountain air. "You feel it too," Leela whispered, her voice rough with unease. Elias's jaw clenched, his amber eyes reflecting the eerie crimson glow of the rising moon. "It's the blood moon," he said finally, his tone low and reverent. "The veil between worlds is thinnest tonight. Old magic stirs, and so do the hunters." A chill rippled down her spine. "Hunters?" His gaze slid toward the dark tree line, where shadows shifted unnaturally. "They're called the Wraithborn," he explained, his voice barely audible above the wind. "Not quite shifters, not quite human. They serve the High Alpha, the one who wants your blood." Leela, her breath caught. "Because of the mark?" Elias turned to face her then, his expression hard, protective, but beneath it, she saw something else. "Fear. Because of who you are," he corrected, his voice sharp, urgent. "You're not just some lost girl who stumbled into our world. You were born under the lunar convergence, a rare alignment when the blood moon merges with the wolf star. It means you're tied to us, to me." Her heart skipped a beat, her chest tightening painfully. She searched his face for any sign of hesitation, any flicker of doubt, but there was none. "You've been keeping secrets," she said, her voice trembling, both accusation and plea. His shoulders stiffened, and for a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, he stepped closer until his warmth pressed against her chilled skin and lifted a hand to brush a loose strand of hair from her face. "I've been trying to protect you," he admitted softly, his thumb grazing her jaw. "Every time. I think I can keep you safe. The universe finds another way to drag you deeper into my world." Her breath stuttered at the tenderness in his tone, but before she could respond, the distant howl of a wolf split the silence, sharp and haunting. Elias's entire body went rigid, his nostrils flaring as he tilted his head toward the sound. "They've found us," he muttered darkly. Without warning, Elias grabbed her hand and pulled her inside the cabin, bolting the door shut. The entire space dimmed as he doused the lanterns, the only illumination now the eerie red glow filtering in through the window. "Stay behind me," he commanded, already stripping off his shirt, the muscles in his back tightening and shifting, as if his skin struggled to contain what lay beneath. Leela swallowed hard, her body torn between terror and awe. She'd seen hints of his wolf before, but never like this, never so raw, so wild. Bones cracked softly beneath his skin, sinew rippling as fur began to emerge along his shoulders. He wasn't shifting completely, not yet, just preparing. Then, the first thud hit the cabin wall. Leela gasped, spinning toward the noise. Outside, shadows slithered between the trees, moving too fast, too fluidly to be human. There were whispers, faint and distorted, as if the wind itself carried words she couldn't understand. "Wraithborn," Elias growled, his voice deep, layered with something animalistic. The cabin shuddered again under a heavier impact. Leela stumbled, catching herself against the table, her chest heaving as panic clawed up her throat. "Elias, what do they want from me?" she managed to choke out, his wolf eyes molten gold now, blazing with primal fury locked onto hers. "Your blood," he said, low and savage. "They believe it holds the key to unlocking the ancient bond, the power to command every pack on this continent." Before she could process his words, the window shattered, shards exploding inward as one of the Wraithborn lunged through. Its form was wrong, twisted, neither man nor beast. Its skin was grayish, stretched taut over sharp bones, and its eyes glowed faintly red beneath the blood moon's reflection. Leela screamed, but Elias was faster. With an inhuman roar, he slammed the creature against the wall, claws tearing through sinew and shadow alike. The Wraithborn screeched, its body dissolving into dark mist as it crumpled, leaving only the faint scent of iron and ash in the air. But outside, more whispers rose, more shadows moved. "They won't stop," Elias rasped, his breath heavy. "Not until they get to you." Leela felt her fear transform into something colder, sharper defiance. "Then we don't give them what they want." His gaze snapped to hers, the faintest spark of pride igniting in his molten eyes. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly, almost reverently. "The blood moon doesn't just mark you as prey, Leela. It gives you power." Her lips parted, confusion clouding her thoughts. Power? But before Elias could explain, another howl, closer this time, violent and guttural, split the night, and the shadows outside began to converge. The Wraithborn were no longer hunting. They were closing in, and Leela's fate, Elias's secret, and the truth behind the blood moon were about to collide. The night was unnaturally still, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. A thick mist curled between the ancient pines, coiling around trunks like ghostly fingers. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the scent of earth, wildflowers, and blood. I stood at the edge of the silver hollow clearing, my heartbeat hammering painfully in my chest. Every instinct inside me screamed to turn back, but something stronger pulled me forward. Fate, or madness, I couldn't tell anymore. The blood moon would rise in less than an hour, and with it, the truth, or the destruction of everything I had come to love. Behind me, I felt Caden's presence like a storm waiting to break. His silence was deafening, his energy coiled tight, dangerous. I turned slightly, and my gaze met his golden amber eyes glinting with the fire of a predator, but beneath it, a shadow of fear. "This is the night," he said quietly, his voice rough, almost hoarse. "The Moon Council will come. They'll smell your blood, Arya. They'll know." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "And if they know, they'll kill me." His jaw tightened, muscles rippling beneath his skin as his wolf surged just beneath the surface. "Not if I kill them first." I stared at him, my chest tightening at the raw promise in his words. A part of me wanted to believe him, to trust that his strength could protect us both from the fate waiting for us. But another part, the rational, terrified part, knew that even Caden, the rogue alpha feared by entire packs, might not be enough against the laws written in blood centuries ago. "You can't take them all," I whispered. "Not the council, not the Shadowfangs. They'll rip you apart." "Then let them try," he growled softly, stepping closer until his heat wrapped around me. "I won't lose you to them, Arya. I won't." I looked away, my hands trembling, my chest aching with the weight of the choice hanging between us. My wolf stirred, restless, sensing the storm building all around us. The bond between us burned hotter than ever, fierce and unrelenting, pulling me closer to him even as danger closed in on every side. The silence of the forest broke suddenly, a distant, haunting howl echoing through the night, deep and guttural. My breath caught, and Caden immediately stiffened, his claws extending as his pupils narrowed into sharp, predatory slits. "They're here," he murmured. A low rumble of thunder rolled overhead, and for a moment, I thought the earth itself trembled. Then, they stepped into the clearing. The Moon Council, 4 wolves, enormous and imposing, emerged from the shadows, their fur glowing faintly under the rising crimson hue of the blood moon. Behind them, several Shadowfang warriors moved like wraiths, silent but deadly, their black coats absorbing the light. One of the council wolves shifted into human form, a tall man with silver hair braided over one shoulder. His piercing ice blue eyes locked on me as though he could see straight into my soul. His voice carried like a whip cracking through the night. "Arya Quinn," he said, his tone sharp, each syllable deliberate. "Daughter of no pack, mate to a rogue alpha. Do you understand what your existence means?" I forced myself to stand taller, even though my legs shook beneath me. "I understand enough," I said, though my voice wavered slightly. "I didn't choose this bond, the moon did." A ripple of whispers passed through the Shadowfang. "Warriors." The counselor's eyes narrowed, his expression unreadable. "And yet," he said coldly, "you bear human blood. That is forbidden. No mortal may carry the mark of a fated alpha. The balance must be restored." Caden moved before I could react, stepping in front of me with a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the clearing. "If you touch her," he snarled, his voice deep, guttural, more wolf than man, "you die." For a moment, silence stretched, so thin it felt like the forest itself had frozen. Then the counselor's lips curved into something like a smirk. "Then you leave us no choice," he said softly. "By blood and by law, the rogue alpha dies." Caden roared, the sound violent, unrestrained, and his body shifted in a blur of muscle and fur, his enormous black wolf form slamming into the ground. The clearing exploded into chaos. The Shadowfangs lunged. Caden met them head on, his claws ripping through one warrior before the second could even strike. A third leapt from the side, but Caden twisted midair, slamming it into the earth with bone-shattering force. I backed away instinctively, my pulse pounding, my wolf screaming inside me to move. But I couldn't leave him. Then I felt it. A surge of heat ripped through my chest, radiating outward, and suddenly the world sharpened. Every sound, every heartbeat, every breath around me magnified. My vision tinged with gold as my wolf rose, clawing at the fragile walls I had built to keep her buried. Arya, Caden's voiced her through the chaos, raw and desperate. Shift. I can't. I screamed back, my throat burning, panic clawing at me. It was something else. Possession, hunger, a raw unspoken claim. Kieran, I breathed, my back still pressed against the wall. He stalked toward me slowly, his growl low and deep, reverberating inside me. When he stopped just inches away, his wolf pressed his muzzle against my throat, inhaling deeply, a gesture I instinctively knew the meaning of, a warning, a promise, a mark not yet made. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying and beautiful. The blood oath wasn't just binding us, it was changing us. And once the full moon rose, there would be no going back. The full moon hung high above Blackridge, a blazing orb of silver fire, casting long, jagged shadows across the forest. The blood moon had passed, but its echo lingered, a trembling hum in the air that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Every leaf, every blade of grass seemed to vibrate with an energy I could feel in my bones. Kieran and I stood at the edge of the cliff overlooking Silver Hollow. Below, the forest spread like a living, breathing creature, restless and watchful. The distant howl of wolves, friends and rogues alike, punctuated the tense silence. His massive form shifted in the moonlight, powerful, dangerous, and impossibly beautiful. I could feel the storm of his wolf surging beneath his skin, restrained by a fraction of willpower, each heartbeat synchronized with the pull of the lunar tide. Arya, he whispered, his voice rough, low, vibrating with the weight of the bond. Tonight, everything changes. I swallowed, my throat dry. My pulse was tangled with fear, desire, and something primal I couldn't name. I know, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. I feel it, the bond, the pull. Kieran's amber eyes softened, molten fire tempered by something fragile and aching. He reached for me, and I didn't flinch. Instead, my hand met his, a shock of warmth and electricity snapping through me. We're tied, aren't we? I asked, voice shaking. By the blood oath, by the moon, by you. Yes, he admitted, the single word almost breaking him. Bound, marked, yours, and mine, but it comes with a cost. I shivered, both from his intensity and the knowledge of what he was saying. What cost? Kieran's jaw tightened. He turned his gaze to the forest below, amber eyes glinting with something feral and unrestrained. The full moon amplifies everything, our emotions, our instincts, my wolf, my rage, my need for you. I might lose control tonight. I might. He swallowed hard. Hurt you. I stepped closer, lifting my hands to his chest. Then don't let go. Not tonight. Not ever. I trust you. His gaze softened again, but a flash of fear crossed his face, the predator and the man in him warring over control. He exhaled slowly, a growl buried in the back of his throat. Stay close. Whatever happens, stay close. The ground trembled beneath us, subtle at first, then stronger. Kieran's wolf surged in him like a storm breaking free. His breath grew heavy, his muscles tensing, fur sprouting in streaks along his arms and shoulders. His claws extended involuntarily, glinting in the moonlight, and his amber eyes flashed golden in the glow. Then it began. He roared, a deep, primal sound that shook the trees, shaking me to my core. The energy around him crackled, raw and magnetic, as if the air itself was bending to the power of his wolf. The pull between us intensified, a tether we could neither ignore nor resist. My own wolf stirred, claws digging into the earth as I felt a surge of instincts, protective, desperate, and utterly untamable. Kieran, I called, my voice cutting through the roar. He turned toward me, eyes molten, torn between human restraint and the savage pull of his wolf. Arya, now. Without hesitation, I stepped forward, my pulse synchronized with his, my bond igniting like wildfire. I felt my body tremble as I shifted, a subtle change at first, claws extending, senses sharpening, instincts raw and screaming. My human mind struggled to stay in control, but the bond, the blood bond, guided me. We were two halves of a whole, predator and protector, mate and fated soul. The wind screamed, tearing through the cliffside, carrying with it the scent of the forest, the distant howl of rogue wolves, and the raw, unfiltered essence of Kieran's wolf. He lunged forward instinctively, not at me, but at the threat that lurked unseen, a pack of shadowfangs drawn to the blood oath, their eyes glowing like embers under the moonlight. I followed him, claws ready, instincts sharp. Every strike, every leap, every growl echoed with the power of our bond. One rogue lunged at Kieran from the side, teeth bared, but I intercepted, sinking my claws into its shoulder. The connection to Kieran surged, the bond pulsing, amplifying strength, reflexes, and awareness. Together, we moved as one, predator and mate in perfect harmony. But the danger wasn't just the rogues. It was the moon itself, pulling at us, testing us, threatening to overwhelm. Kieran's roars grew louder, more feral, and I could see his wolf pressing against the edge of control. "Kieran, look at me," I shouted, my own voice threaded with authority and instinct. His eyes met, mine amber and gold colliding, wolf and man struggling, but recognizing the tether that bound us. In that gaze, he found restraint, focus, and surrender. We moved together, side by side, repelling the shadowfangs, our claws and fangs, a blur, until the last rogue fell back into the shadows, disappearing into the night. The forest was silent again, save for our heavy breathing, hearts pounding, and the distant call of the wild. Kieran collapsed beside me, his wolf receding as human form returned, but his golden eyes never left mine. His chest heaved, sweat and blood streaking his skin. You survived. I pressed a hand to his cheek, feeling the heat, the pulse of life, the bond stronger than ever. "We survived," I whispered. Together, for the first time, there was no fear in his eyes, only trust, desire, and an unshakable claim. "Arya," he murmured, voice rough with emotion, "I don't care what comes next. The world, the packs, nothing matters. You're mine, always." My chest tightened, tears stinging my eyes. "And you're mine." The blood moon above us seemed to burn brighter, bathing us in its crimson light. For the first time, I felt it, the bond complete, our souls entwined, destiny fulfilled. The danger had passed, but the connection, the love, the fire, the primal pull remained, and in that moment, I knew we could face anything, together. The first light of dawn crept slowly over Blackridge, softening the jagged silhouettes of the forest and painting the world in shades of gold and rose. The night's chaos had faded, leaving only the quiet hum of life waking, birds stretching their wings, and the distant trickle of Silver Hollow's stream. I leaned against Kieran, our bodies pressed together beneath the remnants of the blood moon's magic. His warmth radiated into me, steady and grounding, a heartbeat in sync with my own. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I felt safe, completely and irrevocably. Around us, the forest seemed alive with approval. Leaves shimmered with dew, and the faint scent of pine and earth carried a promise of renewal. Even the pack, the alphas in her circle, and the surviving wolves had calmed. The power of the blood oath had been solidified, not just between Kieran and me, but in the delicate balance of the forest itself. Kieran shifted slightly, his large hand brushing a strand of hair from my face. "The council, they accepted it," he murmured, voice low and rough, but relieved. "They couldn't deny the bond. The blood oath, it's permanent, and they see you for what you are, one of us now." I let out a soft laugh, disbelief and relief bubbling up in me. "I'm really part of your world now," I whispered, my hand over my heart. "No more hiding, no more running." He leaned down, pressing his forehead to mine. "You've always been part of it, Arya. Even before the blood moon, before the hunters, before all of this. You were mine." A shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from the raw intensity in his voice. My wolf stirred, purring softly beneath my skin, acknowledging the bond in the deepest part of me. The pull between us was no longer desperate, frantic, or uncertain. It was steady, eternal, a rhythm that matched the pulse of the forest. Slowly, Kieran's lips found mine in a kiss that was tender, yet filled with unspoken promises. There was no rush, no fear, just a shared breath, a heartbeat, and the undeniable connection of two fated souls finally united. When we broke apart, his hands held my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks with gentle reverence. "We survived everything," he said quietly. "The rogues, the shadow fangs, the blood moon. And now, we have a chance to live, truly live." I nodded, tears glistening in my eyes. "And we'll face everything together." "I trust you, Kieran. I always have," He smiled, a rare, soft expression that softened the hard edges of the alpha, revealing the man beneath the wolf. And I trust you, Arya, more than anything. Behind us, the pack gathered slowly, eyes watchful but respectful. The younger wolves trailed curiously, sniffing the air and nudging each other. Even those who had doubted me before now bowed their heads subtly, acknowledging the bond that the blood oath had forged. The alpha's right hand approached us, offering a nod of acceptance. She belongs, he said simply. The bond is true, and the pack recognizes it. Relief washed over me like sunlight spilling through the trees. I felt lighter, freer, no longer a pawn in someone else's story. Here, with Kieran, I had found my place, my home. Kieran wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close as we stepped forward together, walking slowly toward the heart of the forest. The air smelled of new beginnings, of life renewed after trials endured. Where do we go from here? I asked, voice soft, yet filled with wonder. He glanced down at me, eyes glimmering with mischief and affection. Anywhere we want. The world is ours. No pack, no council, no rogues can touch us now. We carve our own path, Arya. I smiled, the weight of fear and doubt finally lifting. Then let's do it, together. The morning sun broke fully over the horizon, spilling golden light across our faces. I felt it warm my skin, filling the forest, the pack, and our hearts with hope. Kieran's wolf purred low in his chest, and mine answered in kind, the bond. Alive, unbroken, and eternal, we stood there for a moment, hands intertwined, breathing in the dawn of our own lives. Every trial, every battle, every whisper of danger had led us to a place of peace, belonging, and a love that was fierce, primal, and unshakable. And as we walked hand in hand through the awakening forest, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. Not as alpha and mate, not as human and wolf, but as one soul bound forever by blood, moonlight, and heart. The world was vast, the future uncertain, but in that moment, I didn't need certainty. I had Kieran, I had us, and that was enough.